With all of that said, I would like to start with testicles. Men who sleep 5 hours a night have significantly smaller testicles than those who sleep 7 hours or more. In addition, men who routinely sleep just 4 to 5 hours a night will have a level of testosterone which is that of someone 10 years their senior. So a lack of sleep will age a man by a decade. Let me start with the brain and the functions of learning and memory. Because what we've discovered over the past 10 or 15 years is that you need sleep after learning to essentially hit the save button on those new memories so that you don't forget. So sleep will actually future-proof that information within your brain. But recently we've discovered that you not only need sleep after learning, you also need sleep before learning. And now to actually prepare your brain, almost like a dry sponge, ready to initially soak up new information. We decided to test the hypothesis that pulling the all-nighter was a good idea. So we took a group of healthy adults and we assigned them to one of two experimental groups, a sleep group and a sleep deprivation group. Now the sleep group, they're going to get a full 8 hours of shut-eye, but the deprivation group, we're going to keep them awake in the laboratory under full supervision. And then the next day, we're going to place those participants inside an MRI scanner. And we're going to have them try and learn a whole list of new facts as we're taking snapshots of brain activity. And then we're going to test them to see how effective that learning has been. And that's what you're looking at here on the vertical axis, the efficiency of learning. So the higher up you are, the more that you learn. And when you put those two groups head to head, what you find is a quite significant 40% deficit in the ability of the brain to make new memories without sleep. I think this should be frightening considering what we know is happening to sleep in our education populations right now. Just to frame that in context, it would be the difference between acing an exam and failing it miserably, 40%. I'll start with medicine and specifically the topic of aging and dementia. Because I think many of us have a sense that as we get older, our learning and memory abilities begin to fade and decline. It's harder to learn, it's harder to recall and retain. But what we've also known for a long time is that a physiological signature of aging is that your sleep gets worse. And not just any type of sleep, by the way, especially that deep quality of sleep that I was just discussing. And only last year, we finally published evidence that these two things are not simply co-occurring. They are significantly interrelated. And it may suggest that the disruption of deep sleep is an underappreciated factor that is contributing to what we call cognitive decline or memory decline in aging, and most recently we've discovered in Alzheimer's disease as well. If sleep truly is so essential for learning, then increasing it in a context where it matters most, such as education, should prove transformative. And it has. Because there are several school systems throughout the United States that have begun to delay their start times so that kids can sleep longer. And then they've looked at the academic outcome. One of the earliest test case examples happened in Minnesota. And they shifted their school start times from 7:25 in the morning to 8:30 in the morning. And the measure that they looked at was actually this. It's called SAT scores. This is, for those who don't know, this is a standard university entrance exam here in the United States. And in the year before they made the time change, when kids were going to school at 7:25 in the morning, the average SAT score was 1,288. Now that turns out to be a respectable score. The following year, when kids were going to school at 8:30 in the morning and getting more sleep, the average SAT score was 1,500. That is a 212-point increase, which is non-trivial. That may change which tier of university those kids go to, and ultimately, perhaps, their subsequent life trajectory. Now, some people have questioned aspects of the Minnesota study, and I think for good reason. But in all of the carefully controlled reports to date, the findings are unequivocal. Academic grades increase, behavioral problems decrease, truancy rates decrease, and psychological and psychiatric referrals also decrease. But something else happened in this story of later school start times, and it was something that we did not anticipate. The life expectancy of students actually increased. And you may be thinking, I don't understand, how is that possible? The leading cause of death in late-stage adolescent teens in most developed nations is not suicide. That's actually second. It's this: road traffic accidents. And here, sleep matters enormously. So another example comes from Teton County in Wyoming. They shifted their school start times from 7:35 to 8:55. And the only thing that was more remarkable than the extra 1 hour of sleep that those kids reported getting was this: there was, as a consequence that following year, there was a 70% reduction in vehicle accidents that following year. Just to put this in context for you as they're bringing this down, the advent of ABS technology in cars, anti-lock brake systems that prevent your wheels from locking up under hard braking so you can still maneuver, that dropped accident rates by about 20 to 25%, and it was deemed a revolution. Well, here is a simple biological factor: getting enough sleep that will drop accident rates by up to 70%. I think we need to radically reconsider the importance of sleep in education. And we've gone on to discover links between sleep disruption and disorders such as depression, anxiety, including PTSD, schizophrenia, and tragically and most recently, suicide as well. In fact, over the last 20 years, we have not been able to discover a single psychiatric condition in which sleep is normal. So I think sleep may have a significant story to tell in both our understanding, our treatment, maybe even ultimately contributing to our prevention of grave mental illness. Now, in the spring, when we lose 1 hour of sleep, we see a subsequent 24% increase in heart attacks the following day. In the autumn, in the fall, when we gain an hour of sleep, we see a delightful 21% reduction in heart attacks. I think many of us would think nothing about losing an hour of sleep. But as a deeper dive, I would like to focus on this: sleep loss and your immune system. Next slide. And here I want to introduce these delightful blue elements in the image. They are called natural killer cells. And you can think of natural killer cells like the Secret Service agents of your immune system. They are very good at identifying dangerous foreign elements and eliminating them. What they're doing here is embedding themselves into a malignant, a cancerous tumor mass, and destroying it. So what you want is a virile set of these immune assassins at all times. And sadly, that's what you don't have if you're not sleeping enough. So here in this study, we're not going to deprive you of sleep for an entire night. You're simply going to have your sleep restricted to 4 hours for one single night. And then we're going to look to see what is the percent reduction in immune cell activity that you suffer. And it's not small. It's not 10%. It's not 20%. In fact, what we see is a 70% reduction in natural killer cell activity. That is perhaps a concerning state of immune deficiency. And it happens essentially after one short night of sleep. Imagine the state of your immune system after months, if not years, of insufficient sleep. And it should come as no surprise then to learn that we are now discovering significant links between short sleep duration and your risk for the development of numerous forms of cancer. Currently, that list includes cancer of the bowel, cancer of the prostate, and cancer of the breast. In fact, the link between a lack of sleep and cancer has now become so strong that recently the World Health Organization decided to classify any form of nighttime shift work as a probable carcinogen. In other words, jobs that may induce cancer because of a disruption of your sleep-wake rhythms. So you may have heard of that old maxim that you can sleep when you're dead. Well, I'm being quite serious now. It is mortally unwise advice. Because if you adopt that mindset, we know from the data that you will be both dead sooner and the quality of that now shorter life will be significantly worse. This is what epidemiological studies teach us across millions of individuals. The shorter your sleep, the shorter your life. Short sleep predicts all-cause mortality. And the challenging news keeps coming, because if you are fighting a battle against cancer and not getting sufficient sleep, that cancer may grow more quickly and aggressively. So here I want to focus work not from my own sleep center, but that of a scientist called David Gozal, who works at the University of Chicago. And he looks at the relationship between sleep loss and cancer in mice. Now, I know this type of work isn't necessarily for everyone, and I will tell you when to look away at the time that's right if you would prefer to do so. But in one of the studies, he took a group of mice and he inoculated them with some cancer cells on the back. And then he gave that cancer a 1-month period to grow. And at the end of the 1 month, he resected the skin and then he measured the size of the tumor mass. Now, half of the mice were allowed to sleep normally during that 1-month gestation period. The other half had their sleep restricted, not total deprivation, just limiting their sleep a little bit, morning and evening. So I'm going to show you a video that describes the results, and now would be the time to look away if you would prefer to do so. So here you can see David pointing to a monitor with a mouse on the screen, and you can see the skin resected there, and you can see that tumor mass quite clearly. This is in one of the mice that was allowed to sleep normally during that 1-month period. In a second, I'll play the video, and he will reveal behind it another mouse, and that mouse was in the sleep restriction group. And you will see the difference. This is the difference. There was a 200% increase in the size and the speed of that cancerous growth caused by insufficient sleep. Worse still, the cancer in those underslept mice had actually metastasized. Now, that's just a medical description, meaning that the cancer had breached the original origin and started to invade other areas, organ, bone, as well as brain. And it's when cancer becomes metastatic that we see mortality rates escalate. So if you are fighting a battle against cancer and not getting sufficient sleep, it may be the equivalent of placing gasoline on an already aggressive fire. Sleep loss acts like an accelerant. And we now know that it produces a harmful biological fertilizer for the more rampant and rapid growth of cancer.